Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and Apple just released the macOS Ventura 13.3 update. This is also known as the big spring release update. We're going to go over all the new features and changes and fixes, along with security content, Apple enterprise fixes, along with some unsupported Ventura Mac news with OpenCore Legacy Patcher 0.6.2 that we got to cover before you update. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. Apple also released macOS Monterey 12.6.4, macOS Big Sur 11.7.5, Safari 16.4 is included in the 13.3 update and is available as a separate download for Big Sur and Monterey. Also, Xcode was not released to the public today. They released a release candidate 2 version of 14.3, so they must have found something right at the end that they need to fix. If you have a studio display monitor, the firmware was updated to 16.4, but it requires Ventura 13.3 before you see the update in software update. On the iOS side, we got 16.4, and look at the version number here. It was, the RC candidate was 4.6, but there was one small change to 47, so if you're on the release candidate of iOS, make sure you check your software updates. 15.7.4 was released for older iPhones and iPads, and then tvOS 16.4, audioOS 16.4, and watchOS 9.4. Our demonstration Mac here today is a 2020 M1 MacBook Air. To update, all you need to do is go into the new system settings, and then you should see software update available in here. Click on that, and it will immediately check for updates again, even though it says it's got one available. We'll give it a second to finish up here. Now we see its updates available, but if you want to see more information about it, all you need to do is click on more info and then click on macOS Ventura 13.3, and I'll give you the full list of all the changes and fixes in this release. So let's click on install now and agree. And we'll type in our password, and it'll immediately start to download the update. This MacBook Air is on 13.2.1, so we'll see how big the download is once we give it a second here. This update is showing 4.51 gigabytes. And there we go, now it's downloading. Okay, there we go. It took about 11 minutes on that preparing mode, and let's click on that restart now, and I'll restart to the update. There it goes. Okay, we're back after installing the 13.3 update. Let's take a look at how long it took to fully install. As you can see, we started at 1:51. The preparing part took 12 minutes, and even though it hung on that 5-minute mark a little bit, the installing time after it rebooted and it was prepared only took about 6 minutes for a full install time of 18 minutes if you didn't prepare the update beforehand. A little bit longer compared to the previous 12 minutes for 13.1 and 10 minutes for 13.2. But as we mentioned in the beginning, this is a spring release update and it has a ton of changes. It was going to take a little bit longer to install those updates. What is the new build version of the 13.3 update? It was updated to 22E252. So if you install the release candidate update from the beta track, you do not have to update to 13.3 because that was the one that was released. Unlike iOS, like we talked about earlier, that jumped up one build version. And if that happened for macOS, it would have been 2.5.3 and you would have had to install an additional update after. How much operating system space did the 13.3 update take? Well, I took a screenshot before we made the jump, and as you can see here, it took about 13.36 gigabytes of size that runs all the operating system files. All we need to do to check that is to go into System Settings, then General, and then the Storage tab, and then you'll see it'll calculate the graph up here, and at the bottom it'll immediately show you down here now 13.37 compared to 13.36, so it didn't take up very much space. And a lot of times it replaces files and doesn't add very many new ones to fix those certain things or add different features. So there was very little difference in the size in this update. Apple also updated the firmware for M1 and M2 and for the T2 Bridge OS. If you have an M1 or M2, it was updated to 84.22.100.650. And as you can see here, Apple does not update the firmware every time, then that's why I document it here. Apple also updated the OS Loader version or iBoot, and that's the same version as the firmware. And if you have a T2 Intel Mac, the Bridge OS was updated to 2016.42.52. Apple also released an M1, M2 IPSW restore file so you can reinstall operating system with Apple Configurator, and a full installer package to be able to create a USB drive to reinstall macOS. Okay, now let's get into some of the new features of the 13.3 update. First of all, everyone's favorite new emoji, 21 new emoji, including new animals, hand gestures, objects, and are now available in the emoji keyboard. I've got a Mac Mini on 13.2.1 and our MacBook Air that was just updated to 13.3, so you can see the difference. For example, on the hand gestures, you can see that there's 2 new hand stopping gestures. There's also some new animals that we can click on here to see those. You can see there's a new black bird and there's a moose. If you want to be able to see this, there's a couple ways you can see see the emoji keyboard. There's an input menu up here where you can show hide and show emoji keyboard. And to get to that, you can go to the settings in the keyboard settings, and then you can go to the input sources right here, click edit, and then you can show the input menu bar right here is that option, so you can see that. You can also get to the emoji keyboard by hitting keyboard command, option command space, and it'll bring it up in any text area. So like if you were in a text, and you can add in an emoji into whatever you're working on really quickly. The next new big change is in the Freeform app. The remove background option in Freeform automatically isolates the subject in your image. So let's take a look at that. We've got our Freeform app on our 13.3 system, and I've also got that on our T2 system here. And to get to that, all you need to do is click on the picture here and then hold down the button here for the little picture, and you'll see the new remove background icon. If we go over here, we do not have that same option over here. So let's try that out. Let's click on remove background. That's actually pretty nice, because it's always tough when you're trying to edit an image to be able to get that whole background app if you're not familiar with like Photoshop and be able to do that. For those people that do that, it's very easy, but if you want to be able to do it quick, this is a nice new option. The next improvement is to the Photos app. Photos Duplicate Album expands support to detect duplicate photos and videos in iCloud shared photo library. So the way it works now is that Photos will detect and search for duplicates when you're not using the application in your library. But now it can actually go through a shared library just in case you or a friend or a family member put duplicate photos of the same photo. It'll be able to find them and remove them in the application, which is a really nice improvement. The next improvement is transliteration support for different languages. Like, let's take a look at Gujarati here. We'll copy this and we'll take a look at the new sources inside the keyboard settings on the MacBook Air. So if we go to the input sources for the keyboard and we click on plus here and search for that, you can see we have the new transliteration, which basically means to represent or spell in characters of another alphabet. So if we go back to the previous version, we will see that we do not have that same option in here. So that's nice that those additions were added. We also have new keyboard layout. So let's take a look at Choctaw here. So if we search for that, we will see on both sections here, we don't have anything in the previous version, and we now have our new layout for Choctaws. We also have a new nice accessibility setting here to automatically dim video when flashes of light or strobe effects are detected. So this is really good for people who, for example, have photosensitive epilepsy that are triggered by these flashes. So if we go to accessibility on our Mini and then we go to accessibility on our new MacBook Air, we can see here dim flashing lights. Video content that depicts repeated flashing or strobing lights will be automatically dimmed. The next improvement shown here is voiceover support for maps in the weather application. So if we go here to our machines, the only thing is I cannot figure out the change from 13.2.1 to 13.3. I thought it would have had to do with going inside the map here, and you can hear the voiceover going over it. And if you're not aware, let that finish. So if you're not familiar, VoiceOver helps vision impaired people. It's on their screen by just hovering their mouse over it, and it speaks to you where you are and tells you your options. So I went into the weather app and I made sure I had the maps open, and I thought there would be some different elements. Like for example, if you click on Cupertino here, but it does the same thing on the previous version. I'm not sure where the change is. If you know or notice a change, let me know in the comments. The next fix we have here resolves an issue where the trackpad gestures may occasionally stop responding. I know that many people have reported this as an issue here, and I didn't see it because I don't use the trackpad so much. I use the mouse, but it's great to see that fix. If you've had that issue and you've seen an improvement on 13.3, I would love to know in the comments. The next fix here is a parental control issue for a feature called Ask to Buy. So if a child wants to be able to buy an application on their Mac or their computer, you can set it up where that request will go to the parent. So let's take a look at what that looks like. If you look here, this is what it looks like on iPhone, and this is what it looks like on Mac. And you can see this request from Will would like to get the app called Night Sky for free from the App Store. So it tells you whether it's free or it's a cost, and you can approve that request here. This was not showing up for the parent, so that's fixed in 13.3. The last one on the list, we go back to VoiceOver, and there was an issue where VoiceOver may become unresponsive after using the Finder, so that should be fixed on 13.3. I also wanted to talk about a issue that was not reported in the patch notes, but a lot of people have been complaining about Wi-Fi issues, randomly disconnecting, bogging out, or having some sort of a blip and then reconnecting later. This person here on Reddit mentioned the same thing. Hey, I'm disconnecting and I never had this issue with previous updates. What they're saying is that this is possibly had been added accidentally as a bug to one of the updates like 13.2, and users have been having an issue since then. I've already had reports from many users that have installed the 13.3 beta, and it's already fixed the Wi-Fi dropping out items for you. So if you had this and you installed 13.3 and this is working for you, please let me know in the comments. Now let's go over some of the new fixes in 13.3 for enterprise and education customers. Now you might think about this like, what? None of these will affect me or be interesting to me, but sometimes there's things in here a little bit more advanced that Apple does not put in the regular patch notes. So these are a really nice list of 9 items that were fixed in 13.3. One issue that you might have been having right here is an issue revolving around software update scans not showing the latest update. And what was happening is that people were doing multiple scans or doing an automated scan to do a manual scan or kill the process because the scan wasn't working. That was causing a bunch of problems in the software update scan, not displaying the latest update available to users. Now, if you were having a problem like this where you weren't seeing the update, let me know in the comments because I want to know if this fixes the issue for you. But this is what a lot of the Mac admins have been looking for, so hopefully this fixes and addresses a lot of those issues. So let's go over some of these items. A mobile device management server can now query the model number of a Mac computer with Apple Silicon. This will work really great for reporting. Also, profile-based Wi-Fi networks are now given an auto-join priority over manually joined networks by default. This is really helpful for anybody that is running a profile-based Wi-Fi settings profile to connect either corporate or education-based Wi-Fi in the facility. So for example, if someone connects to another network, whether it's your phone, hotspot, or any other thing in the building, that now takes priority over the company or education-based Wi-Fi network, causing a bunch of problems where you now have to disconnect and reconnect back to the corporate joined one. We want this one to be at the top at all times because that's the main one. That's a great fix and that's going to help out a lot of people. Also, platform single sign-on now supports WS Trust Federation and to another identity provider. Accessory security now includes SD cards. Accessory security is based around asking whether you can connect certain devices to your Mac, like a USB drive or an external hard drive, but now it does SD cards. So we can look at that here in Apple's own document to allow accessories to connect to the Mac, but now there's going to be a pop-up for SD cards to protect your Mac. The next issue is for Mac computers enrolled in a mobile device management server no longer start up in recovery mode intermittently after a software update. Now this has been a big problem that a lot of Mac admins have been reporting, where they would send out a software update to the latest version of macOS Ventura, and all of a sudden the Mac would boot into recovery mode instead of finishing the update, causing a lot of problems, especially if you have firmware protection on and the user doesn't have access to recovery. That machine's in a really bad state. So hopefully after installing the 13.3 update, the next update will not have any more problems with that. Also resolves an issue where MDM lock on a Mac with a T2 security chip could be bypassed. Someone posted that out there where you could basically do a couple different things that would actually bypass the lock and get to recovery. Now keep in mind, recovery is still protected and activation lock was not bypassed. Both of those pieces were not bypassable. Just the lock only was bypassable. So that was a great fix, and that was also backported to macOS Monterey, but not mentioned in macOS Big Sur, so keep that in mind. Also resolves an issue where Cisco AnyConnect could cause high CPU usage. We've seen this a lot where after updating to Ventura, the process running AnyConnect would go 100% CPU, so that's great that that's fixed. And now also finally, exporting video files to an XAN volume no longer causes an unexpected restart. Now let's talk about the security content of macOS Ventura 13.3. This is a huge release with almost 50 individual security vulnerabilities fixed in this release. So when I always talk about, do I recommend installing it on this one? I mean, you can see by this list how important keeping your Mac up to date is. This is a very long list, so Apple worked really hard getting a lot of vulnerabilities fixed. Again, if you're focused on security in enterprise, education, or even at home, this is definitely something that I recommend updating to get all of these issues patched. I usually run benchmarks tests after every update just to see if there's wild swings faster or slower after the update. But before I would always use Geekbench 5, but now Geekbench 6 has been released, so that's going to be the main one that we're going to use after every update just to check those settings. And you can always check my results on Mr. Macintosh blog user account on Geekbench's website so you can follow along. What I do is I always make sure that I run the benchmark at full power battery while plugged in, making sure the spotlight indexing has finished and all that stuff. off and the CPU is counted down and all the applications are closed. So let's run that benchmark now. Okay, we are back with our Geekbench 6 benchmark scores. You can see here on when I ran it on 13.2.1, we had a 2347 single and an 8585 multi-core. And when we ran it on 13.3, we had a 2363 and an 8575, so really close. And that's again what we're looking for, no big swings forward or backwards, just to make sure that everything's okay. So it looks really good. Okay, next let's go over a quick overview of OpenCore Legacy Patcher updates for unsupported Macs running macOS Ventura. First of all, right off the bat, there was an issue with 13.3 on certain Macs, and it's labeled right here on the 0.6.2 update that was just released today, the day of 13.3. And normally what I do is the next day or two, I do a bunch of testing and I do a update video on that OpenCore Legacy Patcher version and give you a full walkthrough of all the issues and fixes. And before you update to the latest version, you can watch that and I give you a full walkthrough. So keep an eye on that for the next day or two. But for now, I wanted to give a quick overview that if you were on one of these Macs right here, Ivy Bridge, Haswell, or Kepler, keep a hold off for a bit unless you want to have issues with your machine booting, because what happened is that the developers found out right away once they installed the beta that it was causing booting problems with these particular Macs. That's why you always check this first. I always recommend checking the OpenCore Legacy Patcher page first at the top before you make the update, so you can see what's going on or if there's any issues on your Mac. So you can see on here the list of Ivy Bridge. You can see all the Macs listed under Ivy Bridge, and then Haswell Macs. This was happening on these particular Macs, so you want to make sure that we get that taken care of, or just hold off until I give you a walkthrough of that before we jump to the next version of macOS Ventura. And I'll also talk about macOS Monterey and macOS Big Sur, because there's plenty of users out there still running those versions on unsupported Macs and not having any issues, and you don't necessarily need to make the jump to macOS Ventura right off the bat. 2013 Mac Pro, we're running the latest version, 22E252, running the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher 0.6.2. But if you're eager to do it, make sure you download the app first, install OpenCore to your hard drive first, to your internal hard drive, reboot, then install the post-install patches. Then you can make the jump to 13.3. But again, I'll give you a walkthrough in my update video coming up next.